Hey guys, we're here today to install SuperFast rigid vinyl tiles. Before we get started, I would like to explain to you what we've done in preparation here before we start laying the flooring. So first things first, you can see here that we have just regular tiles laid on the floor, and we're just going to install the rigid vinyl tiles directly on top of this floor, and they're going to float on top. Depending on your situation, you might have a concrete subfloor, you might have wood, and all of these are okay to install SuperFast on top of. Just refer to our installation instructions and that will give you specific details on how to prepare. In this case, we had to make sure that the subfloor was flat before we begin. Then we went ahead and cleaned up all debris on the floor. You can also see that we removed all of the baseboards so that we can run the flooring and put the baseboards back in after we're done installing. In this situation, we went ahead and removed the vanity. The reason that we did this is because we have a piece of furniture that sits on 4 legs and is not very heavy. So we're gonna install the flooring up to the wall and then put the furniture back. However, if you're installing in a kitchen or if you have a vanity that sits flat on the ground and is heavy, you would need to leave that in place and install the flooring up to the edge rather than taking it away and putting the piece on top. The final step in our preparation work is to remove the toilet. Step 1, turn off the water. Step 2, flush the toilet to remove all water from the bowl. Step 3, disconnect the supply line. You should be able to easily unscrew the connection with your fingers. Step 4, grab a wrench and remove the bolts that secure the toilet to the ground. Final step, pick up the toilet and remove it from the floor, placing it aside on a towel. Now that the toilet has been removed, remove the bolts that remain on the flange. Use a scraper and cleaner to remove all wax and debris from around where the toilet was. Final step, grab a wad of paper towels and stick them in the hole so that you don't have odors while you work. Now that the room is cleaned and prepped, the next thing you want to think about is the layout and design of your room. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that on the back of every box there are detailed installation instructions that you can refer back to the entire time you're installing. There are 2 pictures on here. There's a monolithic pattern and there's a brick pattern. You can choose either one that you want for your install. Before we began, we had to look at the room and decide where we wanted to begin and what direction we wanted to move in. Our room is 5 feet by 8 feet long, and we wanted the 2-foot length of the tiles to run the longer length of the room to be more visually appealing. With the way that the click works, you have to move from left to right. So we decided to lay our first tile in this corner. We'll be working right down behind me, and then our second row will come in right here. The reason that we decided to do that is because at the beginning of the install, we'll install full tiles, and by the time we get to the end of the install, we will have to cut to fit the room. We decided to make the cuts on the side of the room that's less visually important, and by starting on this side, you will see full tiles right at the entryway and alongside the tub. Each tile that you have is 1 foot by 2 foot. Both the long side and the short side have click on them. There is a tongue side and a male end, and the male end all clicks into the tongue side. When you're installing, it's a very easy rule to remember that the tongue always faces towards you and to the right. As I explained before, the tongue side is facing toward me and to the right. Since this is the first row, we don't have to worry about the angle side of the click. We're just going to be clicking together the end joints. You do that by simply taking your next tile and placing it on top of the first one. What we need to make sure of here is that this is completely straight. A way to quickly test is by using a scrap piece and lining it up to the edge to make sure that it's straight. Once it is, grab a rubber mallet and lightly tap the end joint to engage the click. Now, if you already engaged the click and you notice, oh no, this isn't actually straight, don't worry. You can slide this piece to move it slightly. The only thing you don't want to do once you've tapped the click to engage it is pull your tile up, because you will break the click. Once you reach the end of your last row, you'll need to make a measurement and a cut to fit the plank. As we described before, make sure that the tongue side of the tile is facing toward you and to the right. Measure the space that you will need to fit, and keep in mind that you need to keep a 1/4 inch expansion space around the end of the room. Mark the measurement on the tile and use a square edge to ensure that you draw a straight line with the knife. You only need to score one time with pressure to ensure it's straight. Once you've scored, simply snap over your knee to break. Here we are on day 2 and your project is complete. I'd like to go through some of the finishing details that we completed after we finished installing the tiles. As you can see, we've reinstalled our baseboard trim. What you cannot see is that we left a 1/4 inch expansion gap between where we finished the tiles and the wall. The reason for leaving this expansion gap is that this is a floating floor system, so there will be small amounts of expansion and contraction, and the floor has to be able to move freely. It's no problem to reinstall the baseboard trim, just be sure to nail it into the wall and not into the flooring. After that, we reinstalled the toilet and ran a bead of caulk around the base to seal it. Another place where you will need to run a bead of caulk is where the bathtub meets the flooring. You want to be sure that water does not get caught underneath the tiles. Those are all of our finishing touches. You can bring your furniture back in and your installation is complete.